Okay, so I'll just assume that the mics that you guys are up, or should I please share? Okay. Yeah, that'll be. Off and on. Okay. Since we moved it. Yeah. Having chairs set up. Yeah, we were.
Good morning, Sioux Falls. Thank you.
My name is Janet Good. Welcome and welcome to today's worship service. We're grateful you're here with us today. Today we'll be listening to the music with Steve Brooks of Pete Seeger. So it'll be a special service today. My name is Janet Coonsey. I'll be the service coordinator here today at All Souls Church, where our mission is to seek truth, practice love, celebrate life. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been a member for a long time, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known or not known, or whatever heritage, you are welcome here. Whatever questions you hold, whatever truths you seek, whatever sorrow you have known, whatever joy has filled your heart, whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. We have a few announcements today. At the bottom of your service, there's information on next week's. We'll be listening to, next week we have a presentation on Emily's Hope. Also, letting you know that there's a OWL class being offered. That's Our Whole Lives Sexuality Training. It's age appropriate. Next year, this year, coming in the fall, it'll be offered at Spirit of Peace. And it is particularly aimed for kindergarten and first grade coursework will be offered for kindergarten through K through 1 and second and third graders. So if you have any children in that age range, you might want to consider asking some questions about that. Also, there will be a program for adults. So if you have any sexuality questions or just want to brush up on knowing some things that you might not have thought about, you might want to ask some questions about that too. This Saturday we'll be having a volunteer cleaning and projects day here at the church at 8:30 in the morning. And on Saturday, August 23rd at 7 o'clock, Natasha's Dream, a dramatic monologue, will be given by Elena Luke. So that might be interesting to some of you. And finally, the third annual All Souls Music and Art Recital will be at Touchmark on August 24th, Sunday at 3:30 p.m. So that's coming up, and we hope that you'll be able to come out and enjoy that. Please remember to continue reading the weekly email blasts that come out on Wednesday, and if you need to get that, there's a sign-up sheet in the lobby, so you can do that. And after the service this morning, there'll be a time of fellowship downstairs and coffee and goodies. And then we'll come back up for discussion about today's service. Are there any others who have some announcements? Okay. Then we'll have our chalice reading. No, first, gotta get all my papers straight here. First, we'll have a prelude, The Weaver.
This is the only song in this morning's service that is not by Pete Seeger. It's a song that I wrote as Pete was approaching his 90th birthday. You'll hear more about this song in the sermon. There's a river that's a-winding through the asphalt and the grasses on a passage to the city and the sea. There's a skipper who's a-staring through a skinny pair of glasses at the way that the river used to be. He's dreaming about old Woody and the rails of the Depression, how there's nothing ever new beneath the sun. And he's running down the decades and the blessings and the lessons of fighting in a war that's never won. And you know he'll never know where all the flowers go, but he had to plant them each and every one. He's a keeper of the thread, he's a weaver of the web, and you know the weaver's work is never done. He has forged a mighty weapon, and he ain't afraid to use it or to make a stand where others call retreat. It's the courage of convictions, it's truth that's in the music, it's a spirit made for dancing in the street. And you know he'll never know where all the flowers go, but he had to plant them each and every one. He's a keeper of the thread, he's a weaver of the web, and you know the weaver's work is never done. Now up ahead he's peering where the muddy water's clearing, and the harbor that he's nearing won't be long. But he'll always be a weaver of the dreams of this old river, wherever people raise their voice in song. And you know he'll never know where all the flowers go, but he had to plant them each and every one. He's a keeper of the thread, he's a weaver of the web, and you know the weaver's work is never done. When will they ever learn? You know the weaver's work is never done. Thank you very much.
Now for our chalice lighting. Reading as we arrive out of many singular rooms. We arrive out of many singular rooms, walking over the branching streets. Come to be assured that brothers and sisters surround us to restore their images on our eyes. We enlarge our voices in common speaking and singing. We try again that solitude found in the midst of those who with us seek their hidden reckonings. Our eyes reclaim the remembered faces. Their voices stir the surrounding air. The warmth of their hands assures us, and the gladness of our spoken names. This is the reason of cities, of homes, of assemblies in the houses of worship. It is good to be with one another. Now we'll turn it over to Pete for a bit. To Steve. Singing Pete.
I don't know what y'all's version is of Rise as you were willing and able, but in place of hymns from the hymnals this morning, we are going to sing some hymns together written by old Pete Seeger. The words to this are in the program if you don't know it, so please everyone sing along. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them, every one. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? Gone with young men, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? Gone as soldiers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? Gone to graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time passing. Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time ago. Where have all the graveyards gone? Gone to flowers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? flowers gone. A long time passing, where have all the flowers gone? A long time ago, where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Thank you. You may be seated. I have a song for all ages. Do folks of any folks from all ages come up front for it? Well, then this song is for your inner child. Take just a moment to get my flat tape. This is a song that Pete, of course, didn't write because the song goes back several hundred years, but it's a wonderful example of what folk music is. The song is called Froggy Went A-Courtin'. And of course, there's an audience participation part. It's a great example of how a song can change and evolve over the centuries as different people sing it and pass it along to other people. Some scholars speculate that the original Froggy Went A-Courtin' came from the days of Queen Elizabeth, and it was a satire about a French prince who came across the channel to try to court the queen. Back in those days, and sometimes still in these days, the English used the derogatory term frog to describe Frenchmen. But as the centuries have gone by, it's turned into a kid's song and gotten more and more ridiculous. So when you hear me say, uh-huh, then I want you to respond by saying, uh-huh. That's the audience participation part. Oh, Froggy went a-courtin' and he did right, uh-huh. Froggy went a-courtin' and he did right, uh-huh. Froggy went a-courtin' and he did right. Sword and pistol by his side, uh-huh. Uh-huh. Went down to Missy Mousie's door, uh-huh. He went down to Missy Mousie's door, uh-huh. He went down to Missy Mousie's door, where he had been many times before, uh-huh. Uh-huh. Took Missy Mousie upon his knee, uh-huh. Hey, took Missy Mousie upon his knee, uh-huh. Took Missy Mousie upon his knee and said, ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Missy Mouse, will you marry me? Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Without my Uncle Rat's consent, uh-uh. Without my Uncle Rat's consent, uh-uh. Without my Uncle Rat's consent, I wouldn't marry the president, uh-uh. Uh-uh. Well, Uncle Rat laughed and shook his fat sides, uh-huh. Uncle Rat laughed and shook his fat sides, uh-huh. Uncle Rat laughed and shook his fat sides to think his niece would be a bride, uh-huh. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Where will the wedding breakfast be, uh-huh. Where will the wedding breakfast be, uh-huh. Where will the wedding breakfast be? Way down yonder in a holler tree, uh-huh. Uh-huh. And what will the wedding breakfast be, uh-huh. What will the wedding breakfast be, uh-huh. What will the wedding breakfast be? 2 green beans and a black-eyed pea, uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, it pains me to report that this song has a tragic ending. Although the wedding party began with high hopes and good spirits, there was a wedding crasher who came and turned everything wrong. They all went sailing across the lake. Uh-huh. They all went sailing across the lake. Uh-huh. They all went sailing across the lake and got swallowed up by a big black snake. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Well, we won't sing the children out and save a few moments here, as there aren't any, but we will have joys and concerns. So, we have found it helpful to share the ups and downs of our lives by the practice of taking a stone from a bowl, holding it in our hand, warming it, and expressing our thoughts of joy or concern by placing the stone in the water so that the ripples of the water carry our joys and concerns out into the wider world. I'll begin. This mic you need to put practically on your chin for it to hear you, so keep that in mind. I'll take a stone for yesterday when I went to StoryCorps. It was in downtown, and I recorded a conversation with Scott, and I recorded a conversation with Anne. And so we have our family stories, the best of our family stories, in the Library of Congress soon.
Got a grief. We had we had 10 trees on our corner lot, and after that huge windstorm, now we have two went down completely, and the city is blue X 2 of them, so that means 4 gone. And in the fall they were beautiful, flaming red maple trees, and then in all on that corner. 1, 2, 3 plus our 4, 7 trees gone. So that's going to change things.
Hi, my name's Edie Ann Hafke. I like to think about my friend Karen, who is not doing so well, and she's having to go through dialysis and all that. And so I like to pass along our thoughts and prayers and hope that she's gonna feel better in time and be able to go home sooner than later. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Scott. I just wanted to remind you that the SOS backpack program is going on at the banquet right now. They did what I thought was a record last year of 6,000 backpacks, and they're estimating about 8,000 this year. Help is much appreciated down there. If you got any time, please stop by.
Hi, I'm JC. This weekend, I am going to be heading out to the very most northern part of Alaska to go backpacking for 7 days. So I'm very, very excited to experience it, and we're going to be in a very remote area, which would be really neat to experience.
Hi, I'm Alan with a couple of concerns. First, recognize the passing of my wife's friend Dawn, who was at Ava's house recently. And then update on Larry Flower, Carol's husband. Larry is still at Sanford as far as I know, and is in comfort care at this time.
Hi, my name's Dan Riki, and I'm thankful that we have someone who puts voice to Pete Seeger today. And he had a real compassion for people who suffered in our world due to war, due to aggression of other people upon others. And I just think that we have to be on record as a congregation constantly in awareness of what's happening to the people in Gaza and also the West Bank and other places in our world where they are stressed by war, that we care. We care about people who are starving. We care about people who are in misery. And I just want to put a stone in there to say, thank you for caring, and let's keep caring.
I'm Ann Coonsey, as you probably know by now, and I live at Assisted Living, Edgewood Assisted Living, and it's a delightful place to live. I never knew it would be so much fun, but new people are coming all the time and then make friends, and I've got a whole bunch of new friends down there, and I just, that's a joy to have a lot of new friends.
I'll put in this final stones to symbolize all the joys and concerns which are unspoken this morning. Now let us pause for a moment of silent reflection as we consider what we have just heard and what is in our hearts and in our own minds. And now we'll turn it back over to Steve.
Janet? I invite everyone to join in the chorus of this song. The words, once again, are in the insert. Say, Pete was always, good in his choice of people to write songs with. In this particular case, his co-writer was the writer of the book of Ecclesiastes from the Old Testament. My flat pick again. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. Time to be born, a time to die, a time to sow, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. Everybody. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time stones. Time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time of war, a time of peace, a time of love, a time of hate, a time when you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to stitch, a time to rend, a time of love, a time of hate, time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. And a time for every purpose under heaven. Thank you. You may be seated. Our reading comes from a book called The Incomplete Folk Singer. It's a collection of Pete's writings about folk music from the late 50s and early 60s. And in this reading, he talks about how he first discovered and became enamored of folk music. In 1935, a good bit of song collecting was being done under the auspices of different government agencies, such as the Resettlement Administration. Such work was called boondoggling at the time, but through the work of these agencies, the famous Library of Congress collection was first built up. My father, as an expert in several branches of musical scholarship, was involved in these projects. And I accompanied him on one field trip to North Carolina. We wound down through the narrow valleys with so many turns in the road that I got seasick. We passed wretched little cabins with half-naked children peering out the door. We passed exhibits of patchwork quilts and other handicrafts, which often were the main source of income. I first became acquainted with a side of America that I had never known before. At the Asheville Square Dance and Ballad Festival, I fell in love with the old-fashioned 5-string banjo, rippling out a rhythm to one fascinating song after another. I liked the rhythms. I liked the melodies, time-tested by generations of singers. I liked the words. Compared to the trivialities of popular songs that my brother and I formerly harmonized, the words of these songs had all the meat of human life in them. They sang of heroes, outlaws, murderers, fools. They weren't afraid of being scandalous instead of giggly or cute. Above all, they seemed frank, straightforward, honest. By comparison, it seems to me that too many art songs were concerned with being elegant, and too many pop songs were concerned with being clever. In 1935, I tried learning some of this style of music. 37 years later, I'm still learning. I found that some of the simplest music is some of the most difficult to do. But after 25 years, I think
I have finally learned to play Old Joe Clark, halfway to my satisfaction.
At this time, we're going to have the offering, and then we'll have a message. So first, the offering. And half of today's offering will go to Camp Unistar to help with repairs there from the storms.
And we'll have a song during the offering. This song has a wonderful story behind it. Pete wrote this song back around 1968, and he was scheduled to perform it on the Smothers Brothers TV comedy hour. It was the first time that Pete had been on network TV in over 15 years because he was blacklisted from network TV. But when the censors got to listen to this song, they cut it and Pete completely out of the show. There was so much outrage around the country that 6 months later, CBS relented and brought Pete back on the show, and he performed this song. And although he wrote it during the days of the Vietnam War, it's one of those timeless stories that unfortunately just seems to keep coming back around. It was back in 1942, I was a member of a good platoon. We were on maneuvers in Louisiana one night by the light of the moon. Captain told us to ford that river, that's how it all begun. We were knee deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said to push on, push on. Well, the sergeant said, "Sir, are you sure this is the best way back to the base?" The captain said, "Well, I forded this river just a mile up this place. It'll get a little soggy, but just keep slogging. We'll soon be on dry ground." We were waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said to push on, push on. Well, the sergeant said, "Sir, with all this equipment, no man will be able to swim." "Sergeant, don't be a nervous Nelly," the captain said to him. "Just need a little determination. Follow me, I'll lead on." We were neck deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said to push on, push on. Well, all at once, the moon clouded over. We heard a gurgling cry. A few seconds later, the captain's helmet was all that floated by. The sergeant said, "Turn around, men. I'm in charge from now on." And we just made it out of the big muddy with the captain dead and gone. He's gone. Well, we stripped and dived and found his body stuck in the old quicksand. Guess he didn't know the water was deeper than the place he'd once before been. Another stream joined the big muddy, half-mile from where he'd gone. We were lucky to escape from the big muddy when the big fool said to push on, push on. Now I ain't trying to draw any moral, you can do that for yourself. Maybe you're still walking, you're still talking, you'd like to keep your health. But every day I read the paper, that old feeling comes on that we're waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on, push on. Push on. Mission accomplished. Thank you all. Thank you, Pete. When I was 15 years old, I learned to play guitar from Pete Seeger. Now, at the time, Pete was not aware that he had a new student. I was sitting in a living room at home in Pennsylvania, plunking along with a record called The Folk Singer's Guitar Guide. Once he taught me how to move my fingers smoothly from the D chord to the G and the A7, which took about a month, I could play honest-to-goodness folk songs like I've Been Working on the Railroad. Young as I was, it was a musical point of no return. I knew which side I was on. I soon moved on to other records, but in my mind's ear, I can still hear Pete singing, "You get a line and I'll get a pole, and we'll go down to the crawdad hole. Honey, babe, you're mine." Thus did Pete Seeger enter the soundtrack of my life. Mine is hardly the only life that has danced to his clawhammer beat. For anyone who knows him mostly as the kind of fuddy-duddy in the Bob Dylan movie, you should know that Pete wrote a large part of the soundtrack for the 60s. From Peter, Paul, and Mary singing "If I Had a Hammer," to the Byrds jangling their way through "Turn, Turn, Turn," to the theme song of the Civil Rights Movement, "We Shall Overcome." America marched, protested, and prayed, and dreamed the songs that Pete had a hand in creating. 4 decades later, I heard another one of Pete's songs, up the road from the presidential ranch in Crawford, Texas. A silver-haired Joan Baez was singing to families who had lost soldiers in Iraq, and they were singing back to her, "Where have all the flowers gone?" I confess that I used to think that song was kind of corny back when I was a teenager in the 70s. The Vietnam War was over, and I had no conception that future generations could possibly make the same tragic mistakes all over again. Pete knew better. He summed it up in 5 haunting words. When will they ever learn? It's no accident that Pete should have sung about flowers. In the early days of Sing Out magazine, he wrote a column called Johnny Appleseed Jr. His 7 decades as a musical missionary fertilized many fields of American culture from the 1930s up until January 27th, 2014, when he played his final note at the ripe old age of 94. But the music of Pete Seeger, as deeply as it's imprinted on our American souls, was only one strand in an interdependent web, woven together with history, peace, politics, and spirit. This morning, I would like to draw out for you a few of those strands and to share with you some of the things that I've learned from Pete as a musician and as a citizen of America and of the world. When I start telling stories about Pete Seeger, I could go on for a long time, as long as one of those British ballads that Sir Francis Child collected in the 1880s. That was when the whole concept of folk music was being born. England was a century into its own industrial revolution, and traditional songs of the countryside were being preserved on paper before they went extinct. The movement soon spread to America, as folklorists like John Lomax of Texas went collecting songs in Appalachian hollers, in Deep South prison farms, and Old West cowboy camps. What they discovered was not just isolated songs, but a process, the folk process. A ballad like Barbara Allen or Froggy Went A-Courtin' had crossed the ocean and evolved into a bewildering array of forms, each mutation the work of many anonymous songsters. Explained Pete, maybe we should say that folk music is not so much any particular group of songs or singers, but rather it is a process, an age-old process of ordinary people making their own music reshaping old traditions to fit new situations. Here in America, the nation of immigrants, the folk process went into overdrive. Alien traditions collided to create marvelous musical hybrids. West African songs evolved into blues, which crossbred with the offspring of Scotch-Irish ballads to give us country music. Pete himself grew up straddling two musical traditions. His stepmother, Ruth, was a classical composer, while his father, Charles, was a musicologist and collector. On one of his dad's excursions to Asheville, North Carolina in 1935, Pete had a life-changing experience. He heard his first five-string banjo. He ended up dropping out of Harvard, working in the Archive of American Folk Song at the Library of Congress, and hopping freight trains west with a folk songwriter named Woody Guthrie. Thanks for wearing the Woody t-shirt today. I want to acknowledge the Dylan t-shirt over there too. Woody was the folk process come to life. He was taking old songs and turning them into new ones, retrofitting well-worn melodies with lyrics about current events. His point of view was always from the bottom, looking up. From Dust Bowl tales of his native Oklahoma to strikes and labor massacres. As the two sang in migrant camps and union halls, Pete learned that music and politics were a continuum. The folk process was not just an academic exercise. It was a tool for helping working people to organize. Singing together could lift spirits while it stiffened their spines. And the art of the sing-along became a trademark of every Pete Seeger concert. Wrote Pete, "It is only within recent human history that such emphasis has been put upon professional solo singers. In primitive tribes, all songs, except for the long narratives, were sung by everyone. If a song had a chorus, everyone in the audience naturally sang it. If we really love folk music, we will get audiences singing with us." A decade later, after Pete came home from World War II, he found a new mission for folk music. Radio and TV had embarked on their relentless push to homogenize American culture. Folk music offered a way to push back. It was a do-it-yourself ethic that encouraged people to turn off the tube, pull out guitars, and relearn the art of entertaining each other. On a less conscious level, the old songs connected gray flannel suburbanites with the struggles of their ancestors who had shed so much blood to win the 40-hour week and the 8-hour day. Pete wrote, "Somehow, somewhere along the line, Americans must learn, as our grandparents knew, that it is fun to create for yourself. Ultimately, rank and file participation in music goes hand in hand with creativity on the other planes, arts, sciences, and yes, even politics." In 1948, with Ronnie Gilbert, Lee Hayes, and Fred Hellerman, Pete formed a quartet called the Weavers. For the first time, they put folk classics onto the pop charts. Their biggest record spent 13 weeks at #1. "Goodnight, Irene," learned from the East Texas blues singer Leadbelly. Unfortunately, the Weavers were soon caught up in the witch hunts of the Joe McCarthy era. Pete had sung for communist party gatherings 20 years earlier, and he was hauled before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Unlike some of his colleagues, Pete refused to name names. Instead, he testified, "I have sung for Americans of every political persuasion, and I am proud that I never refused to sing to an audience, no matter what the religion or the color of their skin or situation in life. I have sung in hobo jungles, and I have sung for the Rockefellers." The committee was unimpressed. Pete was charged with contempt of Congress, and he left the Weavers. For the rest of the 50s, he was blacklisted from national TV and radio. But he eked out a living playing college campuses, and he kept right on scattering his seeds. The soil appeared rocky, but in a few short years, the folk music scene was looking like springtime in Texas. Peter, Paul, and Mary, a group directly inspired by the Weavers, made the top 10 in 1962 with Pete's song, If I Had a Hammer. That same year, an appeals court overturned Pete's conviction. Succeeding 5 decades were no less eventful. Pete championed young songwriters like Bob Dylan and Arlo Guthrie. He helped to clean up his native Hudson River, sailing the sloop Clearwater to concerts and teach-ins up and down its banks. But the 1990s, the prophet was finally being honored in his own country, winning Grammy Awards, the National Medal of Arts, and even being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Above all, he kept on performing. When there was a peace protest, a civil rights march, or an environmental rally, you could count on Pete to show up and sing his part. It wasn't one of those rallies in 1980 that I got to sing on stage with Pete. Back home in Pennsylvania, I had been around for the nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island. I helped to organize an event on the first anniversary, and I worked hard to get Pete there. When I met him backstage, I told him that I had written some 3 Mile Island verses to the Woody Guthrie classic, This Land Is Your Land. Pete's ears perked up, and he insisted on writing them down. Later on, as he was wrapping up his set, he launched into This Land, and then he called me up to lead a sing-along, with 13,000 voices joining in. One of those voices was a backup singer named Linda Ronstadt. It was 1999 before I had another run-in with Pete. By then, I was writing songs for Jim Hightower's political talk show on national radio. Every week, I was composing a new song about something in the news, and naturally, I was thinking a lot about Pete. When I found out that his birthday was the day after mine, I took a break from writing snarky songs about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, and I composed a ballad called The Weaver. What I didn't know was that Hightower and Pete were old friends. As I prepared to sing the song on the air, I was surprised to hear Pete's unmistakable high-pitched voice coming over the headphones. Now, Pete always had a streak of the cantankerous Yankee in him, and he was never comfortable with the cult of followers who considered him St. Pete. But he stayed on the line, and he gave the song a listen. I guess that he ended up being touched because he asked me to send him a copy. And before I melted into a puddle on the stage, I promised him that I would. That was 26 years ago. Today, it's hard to imagine a world without Pete. It seemed at times that he would be singing out with us forever. He was 14 years older than Willie Nelson, and still he climbed on stage several times a year. 4 months before his passing, he was at Farm Aid, sharing the mic with Neil Young and Dave Matthews on a sing-along of This Land Is Your Land. And he added a new verse about fracking. A few days before his death, he was out behind his cabin that overlooked his beloved Hudson River, chopping wood. As fine an epitaph as any would be some words that he wrote about himself back in 1960, in the golden days of the folk music revival. As a performer, yours truly does not have much of a voice, and there are plenty of young people who can play rings around me on guitar or banjo. And I'm proud that I have hardly ever met an audience I couldn't get singing. I figure my main function in life is that of a sort of catalyst, bringing some good people together with some good songs. When it comes to those songs, no one would doubt that Pete is still with us, and that we'll be singing him out for as long as there are wrongs to right and voices to raise. So, Pete, to answer your question about the flowers and where they went, they've gone all over this land. The folk process is alive and well and cross-pollinating, and not just on stages and around campfires. New generations are writing fresh lyrics to old tunes, and they're sharing them around the virtual campfires of the internet. I'm sad to say the young men are still marching off to war, and that now there are young girls marching beside them. But there is still a time for peace. And Pete, as you reminded us, it's never too late. Now I'd like to invite us one more time to rise as we are willing and able, and join in sing along on If I Had a Hammer. Once again, if you don't know the words, they are in the insert. I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, ooh. If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out a warning, I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, ooh. If I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out a warning, I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, ooh. Well, I got a hammer and I got a bell, I got a song to sing all over this land. It's the hammer of justice, it's the bell of freedom, it's a song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, ooh. If I had a hammer, if I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, ooh. Thank you all.
Now we'll extinguish the chalice. The chalice is extinguished, but the light goes with us out into the world. Now we have some closing words.
These closing words also come from the incomplete folk singer. If you love a song, you can make it your own by singing it. Through the years, it will become part of your life. Probably you will change the tune in subtle ways, little by little, or add and subtract verses. You'll find that after you have sung a song over and over, lived with it over a space of weeks or months, then you really know what you want to do with it. You'll know how you want to sing it. Over a period of years, you'll get better at it until the song is literally a part of yourself. And that's what folk music should be. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Oh, I would like to mention before we all depart the sanctuary that if you'd like to hear some of my original songs, I've got 2 CDs that are on the table in the lobby, and I'll be taking them down to the fellowship hall as well if you'd like to check them out.